Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this morning. Very impressed about the attendance for a breakfast talk, so well done. Today's talk is about designing for behaviour change. I'm very pleased to be joined by Greg Robinson, Head of Design at ustwo, Suhair Khan, tech entrepreneur and founder of Open-Ended, and Adrian Gomar, Head of Design at L'Oreal. Before we get stuck into the conversations, if you could each introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about what you do, in particular when thinking about designing for behaviour change.
Great. Lovely to meet you all. I'm Greg Robinson, and I am the Head of Design in the London studio. I have been at ustwo for quite a number of years now, around 7 years. So that obviously shows that I kind of enjoy the variety of work that I get to experience at ustwo. And I lead a very kind of broad church collection of designers. And we span everything from design research right at the very beginning of the design process, uncovering opportunities, all of the way up to working into very, very mature design systems. So it's a real privilege to work with a kind of collection of designers that are very T-shaped in their abilities. And we work across lots and lots of different sectors, from finance to retail, health and wellness. And I have also a brilliant, enjoyable part of my job of trying to unlock new types of business that are going to inspire the studio. And we'll talk about some of that work as well today. But lovely to meet you all.
Hi everyone, nice to meet you. I have spent most of my career in the technology space. I was at Google for many years, where I worked on mostly product teams working with machine learning and AI. I worked, for example, on the self-driving car. I worked actually in London, where I met you, Ben. I was running arts and culture at Google. And I would like to say that we didn't design our products with the sole goal of changing people's behavior, because that's always a concern with the technology sector, but certainly that's a large part of how you think about designing products with AI. I now run an incubator called Open-Ended, which is really at the intersection of design, creativity, and emerging technologies. And we work with and invest in businesses and entrepreneurs, as well as creatives that are really looking to push their practice using technology. And I also am a lecturer at Central St. Martin's.
And hi everyone, nice to meet you. I'm Adrian Gomar, Head of Design at L'Oreal Beauty Tech Services. So we are doing web apps and apps around beauty on three main stuff. Diagnostic, where we're trying to get understanding of what people actually are looking for, and then finding the right product for them. We have a second pillar, which is around try-on. So we allow people virtually to try on their products, it being makeup, it being hair color, you name it. And then coaching, and I think this is where we're going to talk about it today. I have a team that spans across France, Toronto, and the UK. And I'm a weird designer, and I'm saying that because I'm an aeronautical engineer by trade, and I transitioned into design, and that says a lot about how I practice design today. I look at design at finding the right problem to solve, and then solving them right. And in a way, I actually moved in the UK way earlier in my career to work at Dyson, and I was really inspired by the way, and I was still an engineer, sorry, at that moment, but I was really inspired by the way Dyson is presenting what an engineer does and what a designer does. It's actually intermix, and I think that that is a lot about the practice that I'm doing today.
Great, thank you everyone. To start off with, maybe it would be good to kind of set out what we mean by designing for behaviour change. I guess there's a number of different things that you might think of when you think of that. Greg, from your point of view, what does designing for behaviour change actually mean?
Sure. So when I think about behaviour change, I'm thinking about how you are changing a habit over the long term. And that habit is having a positive impact on an individual. And there are lots of different facets that you have to be considering when you're thinking about behaviour change over kind of a long period of time. Internal motivations, people's capabilities, and the opportunities that are presented in front of them. And it is the holy grail. It is very, very difficult to change people's habits. It requires repetition of an action over a period of time to be able to build a habit into someone's day-to-day life. And I think that often in this space, it is confused with the idea of engagement. Now, engagement and long-term behavior change are different. We're a product studio. We frequently talk about engagement being a core metric that we're measuring on our products. When you're building a product that's looking to building long-term behavior change, engagement is an important part of it, but these two things are different. Engagement alone won't drive behavior change. There are frameworks that need to be in place to be able to drive long-term behavior change, but engagement is an important tool that you can use when developing products.
And Adrian, you mentioned that at L'Oreal you're getting into kind of shifting from like a product focus to other areas, and you mentioned the kind of coaching applications that you're working on. Can you talk a little bit about that, and does your kind of vision for those services kind of align with what Greg was saying in terms of how you kind of design for changing for behavior?
Yeah, exactly. So if you look at coaching, obviously, coaching, I mean, you're taking a coach for sport, you're taking a coach for all other stuff, and they are trying to guide you along the way. Like you're setting yourself like a target, and they're trying to guide you along the way to get there. I think at L'Oreal, I'm oversimplifying, but we've been doing products for more than 115 years. So we know how to do cosmetic products, and we have like studies that shows that our products obviously are working and they are outperforming different markets. And as such, in terms of what we believe, our products, we believe they can really guide you along. I mean, help you achieve like a better skin or stuff like this. But that requires sometimes you to use the product like for 20 days. And if you just do the first 3 days, then you don't have the outcome you're seeking. It's exactly the same with coaching on sport. If you just run once, you won't see the impact. I mean, yes, you have run once and that's perfect, but you don't see the impact just yet. It's exactly the same stuff. You have stuff that take more long time, and using like digital services to guide you along that journey is actually truly helpful. So this is what we try to explore. We try to explore how to give the people the right baby steps to get there and achieve what they were looking at.
And Sue here, Greg talked about like a difference between kind of designing for behavior change and designing for engagement. It was interesting at the start, you said at Google, we didn't want to design for behavior change. I wondered, is that because you were more interested in engagement, or how do you see that, the kind of relationship between the two things?
Yesterday I was ChatGPTing behavioral change and how because it's such a vast space. And I think what is very interesting is there's when you think about what it means to design for behavior change, you're actually taking a top-down approach on a certain outcome. And certainly what you're building is very much opt-in, and you're helping people to manifest their goals. But I think often, particularly in technology, there's a line between nudging versus coercing people's decisions. And I think that is something that we really need to consider. So what I'm most interested in is, how we build in an inclusive way where you're working to create community, to create engagement, and also then, as you said, to push people in directions where they are fully aware and informed as to where they're going and where they want to go. And I think that, obviously when we're all thinking about our phones or how we're engaging with search as a, first step, but more increasingly with social media and whatever else, those questions have to come up during the design process. And thinking about what it means to bring behavior change about through design should actually have as much participation from users and other stakeholders as possible. So for me, that kind of coming back to what is human-centric design on the one hand, but also the fact that we now have the power with, a few lines of code to change people's behavior in so many different ways at a global level is something that we need to think about more and more. And obviously Google is a great example because the products that Google builds or Amazon builds or Meta builds impact, let's say 8 billion people at a time, because now everybody has a smartphone statistically. Those conversations, I think, need to happen more and more. What does it mean to support people's behavior? But also, what does it mean when we're pushing all of us in directions that we might not know we're going in? And right now, regulation doesn't really help us to navigate that world, and designers have the power to actually create outcomes that are respectful of users, but also are helpful.
You mentioned social media then. I think that's an example of a technology that has definitely changed people's behaviors, but maybe not in a particularly positive way. I think more and more people are, I mean, all the apps even give you options to like turn it off. It's almost like a gambling app or something. Is that kind of addictive, kind of dopamine hit? Is that kind of what the kind of distinction you wanted to make, Greg, between engaging, kind of hooking people on something over the long term, and something like a coaching service or program which is aiming to instill healthier habits or a more positive kind of lifestyle?
Yeah, I mean, I think it comes back to the kind of original way that I was describing behavior change, which is it having a meaningful impact on an individual's life? That meaningful part is really important. And I think that's the distinction. And I think actually behavior change and some of the kind of more dark patterns and the engagement strategies that we are constantly bombarded with. I mean, I am addicted to my phone. It is so difficult to put that device down. In fact, it was only yesterday that I was trying to figure out whether I should go back to a flip phone for a period of time to be able to give myself a detox from some of the applications that I use on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, I think the distinction is down to this kind of like, is it having a meaningful impact on the individual? Behavior change in certain sectors, health and wellness, can have amazing impacts on individuals and society. If we're thinking about reversing type 2 diabetes by taking someone on a journey of improving their nutrition, increasing the level of exercise around them. This is kind of like a phenomenal tool, but it can also be misused. And I think as the design community, we need to take responsibility and make sure that the services and products that we're creating, that we're designing, are going to have a meaningful impact on our individual. Does it pass that test? And there's an activity that we often do at ustwo before we start a project, which is called a pre-mortem. And inside a pre-mortem, we all get together as a group and we decide what is everything that could potentially go wrong with this project. Because if we think about everything that could go wrong with the project, we can then put in coping strategies and we can basically build a project that is then going to be successful. And I think that the space at the beginning of a project, when you're thinking about building new habits for individuals, is an opportunity to think about whether the behaviors that you're building are going to have that positive impact. Take time in projects to have that moment of pause, to think about the impact the work that you're doing can have on an individual.
Was that something that resonates with you at your time at Google? I mean, I don't know if it still is, but at one point the Google catchline was "Don't be evil" or something along those lines. Is that kind of is there some alignment with what Greg's talking about there?
Well, actually, I was thinking about something else, which is about Google. I worked on the arts and culture team. I don't know how many people has the app. I don't want to for Google anymore, so I won't feel bad. But anyway, it's this app, and it's kind of amazing. We digitize like most of the world's major museums, and you can explore them online. But also we did a lot of work with machine learning and augmented reality. And so, of course, it's an amazing resource. It's not monetized by Google, but not that many people in the context of the world are interested in art museum collections. It's like very self-selecting who goes and then who goes online to explore it. So we thought a lot about windows into that world. And one example was we had this collection of like a couple of 100,000 portraits from around the world, and nobody looks at portraits. It's kind of neither here nor there. So we developed this tool called the art selfie, where you take a selfie and it uses machine learning, and it doesn't really store your face for longer than it takes to scan your, against all of the portraits in the collection, and it would show up with your closest matching 3 portraits. The kind of downside of it is that most portraits in our collection at the time were of what most portraits are in the canon of Western history, which is, guys like you.
Yeah.
But
I would have had a great time with that app. Yeah.
However, it was really fun, and it was a great way to get people to go in and like look at portraits. And what was in it for us is just to highlight, parts of the collection that were underexplored, and it was fully owned by a museum with metadata, and curatorial notes, and it was just a way of playfully engaging people into, let's say, a more serious subject. So I think there are many ways of creating windows. You know, in technology, it offers the opportunity to be dynamic, to be flexible, to be playful, to go into avenues and much less serious, obviously, than health and wellness, to find, you know, new ways of thinking. And I think a little bit we've lost that sense of wonder and excitement. We're so hung up on, like, is it evil or is it, you know, it's so binary right now, but the possibilities of what it means to, you know, sit with, you know, ChatGPT and have a chat about something that you don't, you know about might be wrong. But I think that's fantastic. And I think sometimes we get lost in that. And I think in thinking about things like behavior change, my immediate response was to think about, oh my God, like, do we really want to be seen as changing people's behavior, as opposed to, you know, in thinking about what does it mean to explore something in a new way, or have a new insight, to learn differently, and to be able to create an avenue for doing that. And again, that's what design does. It creates a new way of engaging with space or in a room, or questioning the world around you in ways that, you know, were not previously possible. So in that sense, the more work that we hear about that drives behavior change that's positive, I think is really important also for people in this community.
I guess Greg talked about like idea of capability, motivation, opportunity. I guess that's kind of like the capability, giving people the ability to do something, which then means that they can change their behavior. I'd like to talk a little about some specific examples of your guys' work in this area. I'll start with you, Adrian, because you mentioned the coaching app that you're developing at L'Oreal. I think you're working with ustwo on that service. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? What's the idea behind it? How does it work? And through that project, were there any kind of insights or learnings or things that made you think maybe differently about how to design for behavior change?
Yeah, definitely. So again, it was so I can't go into like a lot of details giving you exactly the name of the products and so on, because it's coming soon, so you'll get access to that. But the bottom line is that we had a product that is what we call the life changer at L'Oreal. So essentially, it's a product that we know, and we have feedback from people that when they use it, it just changed their lives. Like, they feel more confident into their skin, because we were working on skincare, more confident into their skin, and like literally like changing from like having no confidence to really feeling empowered. That product, we realized one thing is that people were dropping, like they were using it 3 days, a little bit like what I was talking previously about, the going on to like a run and then dropping. And so they were dropping after 3 days, saying it doesn't work. And actually it's not true. It works, but after like 21 days. For a silly reason, your skin just cycles and changes after 21 days, something like this. So if you don't apply it like for 21 days, then it doesn't have the impact you're seeking. So we were exploring that in terms of how to do that with a digital coaching app to guide them along that journey. And funny enough, it goes back to fundamentals of coaching, which is the first thing is education. If you don't know what's happening, like if I don't explain you that 21 days, obviously like you can't understand that after 3 days it doesn't have the impact. So it's about digesting that understanding of what's behind it, and then giving it in a format that is appealing and that is aligned with the people that we are designing for. So we are designing for Gen Z, and Gen Z, we know they want like quick stuff, and they want to skim through quickly and so on. So we had to be like really powerful in terms of, you know, surfacing the most important stuff. So the content that we are sharing with them is really quick, snackable content, but at the same time not overwhelming, so that they have like a 3-4 content each day, no more than that. And if they want to explore more, they can, but actually moving there. And then the second stuff I would say is like we talk about nudging. A silly stuff is that what I said is that apply the product like each day consistently for 20-ish days. Just the fact of having like a tracker of saying you've applied it. We're not even like sending you a notification just yet, but just you having to type that is already like reinforcing a behavior. And I think that this is something really powerful. And this is a little bit the space. You were asking me like, why does L'Oreal play in that space of coaching? I think this is where we want to play. We let's be honest, we think we have the right product. So how then we guide into people to get that outcome.
And how do people kind of enroll on the program, or like do you buy the product and then there's a QR code to download the application? How does that kind of relationship between product and service work?
Yeah, so now you're talking more about in the long run. I think in the long run, this is what it is. Like you could see when we are selling a product today, we're just selling the cosmetic products. But tomorrow, we could sell the cosmetic products and the service attached to it with any business model you can think of. But I think that this is becoming interesting because it's augmenting the product. Like there are stuff you can do with the product itself, and there are stuff surrounding it. If we look back also like at just well-being and mental wellness does have an impact on how you will feel, and as such this is also something that is worth exploring within that space. So it's taking us into a new space at L'Oréal that we are really interested in looking and trying and exploring new stuff.
You mentioned Gen Z, and obviously, like on TikTok, there are so many influencers doing like skincare regimes and makeup. Like, is this kind of like an attempt to kind of wrest back control of the narrative of how to use these products?
So I'm going to give two answers here. So the first one is that if you want to understand like the intention of my team, it's as silly as we realized that people that are feeling great in their skin and in their beauty generally always have like a friend or someone next to them that is coaching them. Not directly, but just giving them tips, giving them, oh, this product is super cool, use it, or try this on, and so on. Imagine we were able to do that digitally. Imagine we were able like to encapsulate what a good friend will do. What a good friend does is that they are not forcing you. They are just looking at you and they are just listening to you, and based on that they are telling you, well, maybe you should try this out. And then they are guiding you like really on the journey of, okay, but apply it this way. It does change stuff. So I don't think it's taking back control. It's more like saying, we know our product so much that we have some stuff to say. And so we are trying to share that. It's almost sharing the good practice. So it's, I wouldn't say take back control, but it's more like sharing more openly what we know internally.
Mm. And Greg, can you talk about some of the products that ustwo have designed in this space? I think there's one Sproutiful that's like launching this week. Maybe you could talk a bit about that. But I think you've done quite a lot of different coaching apps and things.
Sproutiful, which you will definitely be seeing kind of maybe next door. Please have a look at it. I am admittedly a bit of a gut health nut. So as well as being a product designer, I've kind of like just stumbled into this area and find it absolutely fascinating. And so Sproutiful is all about how do we increase your plant diversity. There are lots and lots of clinical papers that are coming out now that are talking about the importance of fiber and the importance of kind of like feeding your gut with a variety of plants. And that covers everything from vegetables, nuts, seeds, legumes. And we really wanted to try and democratize the idea of making it easier to increase your diversity, which has enormous kind of like health potential for you across lots and lots and lots of different areas. It really kind of like cuts down on potential comorbidities. It can kind of like improve brain health. It has huge impact. It can have huge impact on individuals. And so Sproutiful is about democratizing it. It's about guiding people on a journey of how you can start to incorporate more plants into your diet. And actually, it goes back to kind of like differentiating between the difference between long-term behavior change and engagement. So at the very beginning of that project, one thing that we tried to do is try find an idea behind the product. Ideas behind products are what differentiate products from other products that are on the market. And so our idea on this product was, how do we make the invisible visible in your gut? And so when you look at the way that we've created the UI on this product, the UI on this product is deliberately trying to engage and bring that concept of making the invisible visible. So you'll have a very kind of like dynamic and fluid homepage that starts to grow and morph based on the way that you're kind of tracking the plants that you're consuming over the course of a period of time. And I think to go back to some of the features as well that's really important when we think about behavior change, tracking is a fundamental part of behavior change. People need to understand the progress that they're making on their journey. And one of the things that we did on Sproutiful was we started to lean into the idea of multimodal AI. So how do we make tracking more seamless when it kind of becomes, I mean, for years and years, tracking is just a burden. I mean, everyone will have seen the apps where you've got to write down an essay from all of the food that you've eaten from the day. Now, Sproutiful, the concept is that you can take a picture, we're able to then use AI to analyze the picture and then draw out the ingredients from it. But actually, it presents multiple opportunities within the product as well, because you can open up your fridge door, you can take a picture of your fridge, and then you can ask what you should be eating for that day. So it can start to construct recipes. Now, these type of features, before AI came along, were features that would have been placed in a roadmap and you would never have reached them because it would have taken so much development firepower to get to that point that it had just never seen the light of day. And actually, I think this is where AI is going to play a really exciting role in behavior change, because it's going to make some of these aspects of product and design even more, I guess, readily available. So please have a play with Sproutiful. There's a little kind of a GPT coach that we've also trained with some motivational interviewing. It's just the beginning of a journey. It's what the team were kind of like building over the course of 8 weeks. So bear that in mind when you're kind of giving it an evaluation or a review. There's lots more to come in that space. But another product is the body coach that we did. And that, I think, was kind of the anchor or the cornerstone of where we started to really understand the coaching practice in a lot more detail.
Tell us a little bit about the body coach. What was that?
So the body coach is working with Joe Wicks. It was pre-pandemic when we had a brief kind of slide into the studio. It just so happened that this is one of those crazy moments where you're working on a project and you feel like all of the stars are starting to align. This was one of these moments personally for me where I'd actually been training. I'd had 2 children. I had no time to exercise, and I happened to start doing some HIIT training. It's really convenient. And I spent 6 months at the end of a HIIT thinking, why does this guy not have a product? This is crazy. I'm like watching a YouTube channel and I'm getting sent some PDFs of some recipes that I should be following. I was like, this is ripe for having a digital product. It would elevate the current experience. We got it, we won it, it was fantastic. And this product is all about how do you take someone on a journey of improving their physical health, and that entails increasing your exercise, increasing your nutrition. But then the long-term piece on this is it eventually has a significant impact on people's mental health. And that's the kind of the reviews that you'll see time and time again if you're ever on Joe's Instagram, of the impact that it has on individuals. And that really became, I think, our bedrock, us too, of starting to kind of like understand from a high level what it takes to be able to build a really successful coaching app that was leading to long-term behavior change. And we have 3 principles that we talk about, us too, when we're thinking about coaching. First one is you have to make sure the product that you're building is doable. You need to make it tunable, and you need to make it renewable. So doable, whatever product that you're building in terms of long-term behavior change, you need to make sure that people can start off, whatever their starting place is, easily. So on the body coach, we had multiple different fitness plans that people could sign up to based on what their level of fitness was. Beginner, intermediate, expert. The next one is around tunable, and I think this is actually where AI plays a really important role. How do you create an experience that feels hyper-personalized and relevant to an individual? And the final one is renewable. You've got to give people a reason to come back. So on the body coach, we built in, it was monthly cycles of new content that were dropping to the user. And that was a mechanism that Joe had been using. He decided that he was going to do 4-week cycles. And I cannot tell you how powerful that was when it came to kind of keeping people engaged over a 3, 6 month, 9 month period of time. It was a really kind of like phenomenal way of keeping people on board. That's kind of at a high level how we think about it. Make it doable, make it tunable, make it renewable.
I'm interested in also like whether you kind of you can nudge people with kind of like positive reinforcement or kind of negative. So like you should do this or you don't do this, or encouraging people. I guess carrot stick kind of thing. With Sproutiful, if I'm just taking pictures of red meat and McDonald's, does my homepage kind of wither and die inside because my gut has become so unhealthy, or is it a kind of purely positive experience and encouraging the positive behavior?
Yeah, the app crashes. It just breaks in front. It breaks in front of your eye. You're no longer able to take pictures. No, the homepage. It's all about kind of again the idea of like how do you kind of like garden your microbiome. And so it doesn't wither. It just is not quite as kind of like bright and beautiful and luscious as it is when you're taking a lovely selection of photographs that is kind of giving you a broad spectrum of all of the plants that you're eating.
Great. You talked about with the body coach how the techniques you use to drive engagement over the long term, and how that's super crucial for any kind of meaningful change. You can't just do it straight away, like you were saying, Adrian. How do you think we can design for that kind of long-term impact? Prioritizing something that is not just now when you want to do it, but something that persists over time and can really have that meaningful change in people's lives.
So I'm thinking about my fridge and like if I took a picture of the fridge. Anyway, so on that, thank you for asking this question. I think that I still think we are in this space where we have access to all of these tools and we're able to now put an endpoint. So I don't know, will we really need Joe Wicks around in his app in like a year's time? Possibly not, but the end goal of people being healthier and fitter probably will persist. So I think particularly with AI, but in general, there's a lot of questions we now need to answer as to where we go next. Part of my work is very much focused on R&D and emerging technology and really exploring narratives on cross-disciplinary engagement in AI. And so where do designers and artists and philosophers come in a serious way to help to design technologies for the future? And I think that unless we have that consistently, particularly at a global level, we're not going to end up building systems that are necessarily sustainable or products that really work for everybody. The great thing about technology is that it's dynamic. You iterate on your products and your apps over time. Our values shift as societies, as we know. And I think we have an option now to really interrogate questions that we've not had a chance to do in the past. Gender bias is a great one. We talked about portraits. AI has been accused of racism, of gender bias, of all of the biases that data carries. And I think there's an opportunity to engage with algorithmic bias, with the sourcing of data, with cultural diversity, and how we build products for the future and products for the whole world. So something that works for one person's health might not work for another's. A great example is that there's multiple examples of women using AI products in healthcare and getting misdiagnosed because most of the data was based off of samples of men or not, adjusted for that. So I think to build for the future, we need to think about design principles, inclusive design, decolonization in design, decarbonization. I think design actually offers really important academic frameworks that should be brought to the technology sector. Technology as a sector doesn't have its own code of ethics in the way that journalism does or law does. And it's an opportunity to borrow and to engage. And I think that if we are to build in thoughtful, positive ways, as you probably work with doctors and nutritionists in building these tools, we need to be involving a lot of stakeholders into the process, and we need to be taking accountability for ourselves. I think that the final thing to say is that in technology, we're kind of building for everybody. When you work in tech companies, you want 1 billion users. You want everyone to see what you're doing, and you want them to take your product and to do whatever they need with it. But that doesn't always work. And I think the top-down approach of setting values, telling people what's good for them, isn't always the right approach because there's an imbalance of power. The final thing that I think is worth talking about with technology and AI in particular is there is an ecological impact of using any of these tools, particularly generative AI. I think we don't talk about it enough. And I think that if we're to think about sustainable design and products that last not just in terms of user stickiness, but actually are coming back to our sense of responsibility to ourselves and our planet, we need to be considering the fact that carbon emissions, impact on water evaporation. It sounds like it's happening somewhere to the side, but it's really happening every time we run a search query. And we can't change that sitting in this room, but we should be aware of it. We should be talking about it. I think at some point there should be like a little sign somewhere telling us, what kind of ecological impact the products that we're working on or using are generating, because that's impacting all of us in the immediate term, but also in our future.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Greg, you gave a really compelling example of how powerful AI is as a tool, and it allows you to do things that you just wouldn't be. It was just beyond there wasn't the resource to develop. So yeah, you're talking about like the kind of risks and concerns there. Adrian, how do you feel about AI in that sense? Like, how much of it is an opportunity is it? What risks do you think there are out there, and how do we kind of mitigate those or safeguard them or prevent some of the things that Suhair talked about from happening, some of those negative consequences that may be unintended, but when you kind of unleash such a kind of powerful kind of tool, there's that kind of possibility.
So I think there is a lot of layers there. I mean, to me, there is a systemic layer, and this is the one that you were talking about. Like the data it is trained on is super important, and you can do anything you want if it's not trained on like an inclusive data set and so on. You're missing the point here. So I think that's one layer, and this is something that is definitely we need to go back to the root of those algorithms being built, and I fully support what you said. I think also there is and again it goes back to that when I was saying I'm a weird designer. So when I was an engineer, I actually made a PhD in computational fluid dynamics, which is not something I use today, but essentially there we were using machine learning to try to identify some elements on aircraft. I took that, and when I moved at Dyson working as an acoustic engineer, I took that and I tried to use machine learning to try to get better outcome at the measurements we were doing. Essentially, we were making like a lot of measurements. Dyson is making a lot of prototypes, and that was what we were doing there. And the long story short is that making those measurements, I was trying to feed a machine learning algorithm to try to understand what design tweak we should do to optimize the system. Essentially, the result was really surprising. It was almost averaging everything. It was not giving me the outlier that could be opportunities to spot stuff and then go straight in to make the system completely different. It was giving me like a response that was almost like a flat response, something like a good enough design. And I think that this is where AI is giving us like a good enough first bet, but then to go deeper, we need more. And if I then translate that into behavior change and coaching, I still believe that there is a lot that experts and people that are within that field, it being like skincare, it being like healthcare, it being like sport, they can put the foundation of what a good coaching could be. Then AI, I see it as really interesting to interact with it, because what AI does that we haven't had the chance to do in digitally really simply is the organic conversation. This is something we've tried to tackle. Like we always have like a decision tree. We had different interface that was trying to make something very dynamic, but we always ended up having a system that is rigid. Today we have something that is very flexible to be able like to converse with you and then little by little gather the information and then feed you back with the output. I think this is something super interesting. So I guess my answer is like, I wouldn't use AI to give me like the coaching program or something on this. I think it would be like it would be a good average, but something just a starting point, not the end game. Yet to interact with it, it's so interesting, because instead of asking questions in a given order that feels like someone decided it has to be in that given order, it can be very flexible, and sometimes when humans respond, they do give two answers that are actually responding to two questions. So I think this is where there is something really interesting that we I'm not sure we still have cracked it yet, but there is something worth giving a shot.
And Suhair, how do you think we can, or designers specifically, can kind of safeguard against some of the potential issues you mentioned? You said journalists have a kind of code of ethics. Like, do we need one in the tech space or around AI? Kind of universal code that people can follow, or how do you think we prevent some of those potential
Well, everyone
concerns?
is trying to make a code right now. Every government and every tech company, and everyone's kind of piling in on that. So it's an important conversation to have. I think what is amazing about this moment is that it's very rare in any kind of technological innovation to have it to be about the human mind and the imagination and the creative spirit, ambition, desire. And I think that's where it makes suddenly the whole creative community comes front and center. Of course, we have the risk of losing ownership. There's a lot of issues, of course, with all of your IP, with what you share online, with copyright. There's a lot of legal issues around that. There's like philosophical issues, if you're just listening to a song, if a bot listens to, an AI generated song, who's listening? But at the same time, I think it makes the role of creative people even more important. The idea of questioning yourself and questioning the world around you is something that is very much the work of designers and artists. I think engineers are creative people. I think, they've built a lot of the world that we live in. And equally, I think there's an opportunity for, whether you're a designer or an artist or an architect, whatever your practice is to lean into this moment, because your skills and your perspective, as you said, you might have two thoughts at once and two answers at once. You have your entire lived experience that shapes your, memory of this conversation. And that's something that obviously is not going to be replaced or, supercharged. And if you bring that to your bountiful conversation with your gut, it's your gut, it's your own biome. It can't really be then, it can be mapped out, but there's, billions of us. So I think for me, this moment in technological innovation presents a moment of concern to large organizations, because I don't think they actually want to steal everyone's ideas and monetize them. So I think there's a chance to lean in a positive way. And hopefully most of what everyone does here is not just about AI or technology. And so the idea of what's tactile, what's physical, what's experiential is at the end of the day what's determining all of our lived experiences. We now have these layers of consciousness that are overlapping with our phones, and they should be used to augment our days or our health or our intelligence. And I think people in the creative space are uniquely empowered to actually participate in that moment. And rather than us necessarily worrying about who's writing which rules, which will continue to happen, is to think about what's meaningful to you, to educate yourself, and also to build in a way where you're informed and intentional, as designers are, about what outcomes you want to accomplish, and whether it's behavior change or just building something beautiful and fantastic and or comfortable. That should be your practice, and you should be empowered to keep doing that.
And Greg, I'd like to ask you about those big weighty kind of ethical concerns, but thinking about good design. A few times we've talked about the idea of human-centered design, and I'm curious how you think that AI kind of fits into to that, which is a kind of, it's a cold algorithmic machine. How do you think that we kind of can keep focused on the human and create meaningful experiences using AI? And is there a kind of tension there or not?
Well, I mean, I think that when you're designing a product or a service that's looking to build long-term behavior change, you need to be bringing an empathetic lens to it. And that's critical, because you have to be able to understand people's starting points, both physically, psychologically. You need to be able to understand the environment that they're operating in to try and design easier ways of them being able to fulfill what that behavior is. And being able to empathize with an individual requires you to follow a user-centered design lens. It requires you to understand the people that you're designing for deeply. And I think you need to hold on to that. AI is going to be brilliant when it comes to being able to scale our services, making them more hyper-personalized, bringing adaptability into it. But you still need to have that empathetic lens that is the driving force behind creating great digital products. And we've all got a responsibility to make sure that the products that we're designing and that we're building and launching into this world have that meaningful impact on individuals. Question everything.
Thank you very much. We've got a few minutes left, but I would like to give all you guys the opportunity to ask any questions, and we have one straight away. Perfect.
Hi, my question, it actually came to me a little while ago once when you were all talking. That's why I put my hand up pretty quickly. But I'm hearing a lot of talk around designing for individual behavior change. And I'd just love to know your thoughts about not just the individual, but everyone else around them. Because I think this is a big problem with tech in general, right? We're always so individualistic, like, how can I improve myself? But is it also improving yourself to have a positive impact on those around you, whether that be on a family, friends, or societal level? Like, how do we start thinking about that? Because, for example, with the L'Oreal thing, like, what if I use it and I'm like, great, I've got great skin. Now I can point out what's wrong with everyone else, Or actually, does it make you more cognizant? Or actually, like, what is it that we're aiming for, Not that I'm trying to say that that's what L'Oreal's going to do, but...
Is the question like, how do we kind of, rather than like individual behavior change, how could you design for like a more kind of collective behavior change?
Like considering how an individual's behavior then has an impact on other people around them as well. Like not just thinking about how can I help this person, but what does helping this person mean for everyone else?
Yeah, so I thought it was really lovely your example where you said you usually have a friend, like 100%, right? You have your friend who knows about makeup and your friend who knows about skincare, and so maybe what you're saying is that then if you lost a friend and you're just with yourself, there's part of the pleasure is almost lost, or I guess getting really fit and then that you're fit. But I can give my opinion because I thought it was amazing products, and I don't think we have an answer. I think what we're lacking right now, of course, is like valuing community, and that's what Dezeen does, right? You have a community around the world that comes online actually, and then you come together in spaces. And my opinion is you can't just manufacture that or AI that. That takes time, it takes nurturing, it takes investment. I think we don't value time enough anymore. You have cathedral time in architecture. You think 1,000 years into the future when you build a cathedral, and we just don't, I think, live in that way anymore. So if you want to fix your face with a filter, it takes away that sense of the difficulty of maintaining a friendship. So I don't have the answers for it, but I was actually just commenting because I think that you can continue to build on those communities while still empowering people to look nicer, if in a way that makes them feel better.
Yeah, obviously L'Oreal is not trying to how can I say, to distinguish someone and then feel the other miserable, and that's not the point. When I was talking about skincare, I'm talking about skincare, not makeup. I'm talking about like, there are some stuff that then makes you less confident, and it's just a matter of this. I'm talking also, sorry, silly example, but I do have friends of friends that do have cancer, and at L'Oreal, when we're with the cancer, when you have like the chemicals that goes inside, they dry your skin like super hard. You are in a moment of full vulnerability. You're feeling like you are in a moment of your life where you need to fight, and your focus should be on that. Having like a cream that can alleviate that and makes you feel better here is something definitely really powerful. This is the kind of stuff that I'm talking about. Now, as it relates to communities, if we go back to what you were saying, like with behavior change, what we are trying is to help someone achieve their goal. If you were to translate that to communities, I would ask like, okay, what's the goal of the community, and then we can I think think around that. And I strongly believe that yes, there is an individualistic, because we started to stop you started to replace interaction with the digital device, so to speak, in some areas. I think that the more I'm moving forward, I'm a huge fan of Jack Knapp, that was in Google and making that design sprint. He wrote a book called Make Time, and there is like this distraction-free iPhone. My iPhone is not fully distraction-free, but it's still an iPhone, but with like less apps, and I'm trying to remove a lot of the clutter and so on. My point there is that as an individual, whilst making that, I'm also having an impact on my family. So I wouldn't say that necessarily because I'm seeking an outcome that is for me as an individual is clashing with my community. But what I agree with you is that if ever it was the case, then we should maybe design for the broader system, which is the community. So I think there is a tension there, and I would love to learn more about maybe the issues you would see, and the thing where you would think that designing for behavior change within a community would make sense. I would love to learn more about that.
And Greg, when you're designing something like Sprouted for the Body Coach, obviously that's for a person to get in better shape or improve their diet. But do you think about the wider kind of collective impact of those products? Because I guess healthier individuals at scale become, you get a healthier society, less strain on the NHS, etc., etc. You potentially have quite far-reaching positive benefits that go beyond the individual.
Absolutely. I think goes back to that point about empathy and research. And when you're starting to kind of build a deep understanding of your users that are going to be embarking on this journey that's really tricky, there are a lot of other actors that are involved in that. Caregivers, family, and it's important to make sure when you're doing that research that you're incorporating this broad community into the material that you're then using to start to formulate what this product can look and feel like. And I think it got me thinking, because often we measure at an individual level whether it's been successful or not, but maybe there's opportunity to also start to measure and understand the deeper impact that it can have when you become a better self by going through this long-term behavior change. I think there's potential there to see kind of the ripple effect or the butterfly effect that it can have on your close network and then out into far-reaching communities as well. I hypothesize that over the next couple of years, behavior change or the success of people embarking on journeys where they're going to change their behavior, we're going to hit a higher success rate, which is great, because that, I would believe, is going to have far-reaching impacts on our communities. Let's bring down type 2 diabetes. What's the impact that that's going to have on our health service? There's lots and lots of areas where this can have profound impacts on our communities as well as just individuals.
Great. Another question at the back.
On the long-term behaviour change, I know with a lot of apps, there's sort of a temptation to make it like a game and give points. And you mentioned on like the homepage, it's sort of more positive reinforcement. How do you sort of draw that line where you stop it from becoming a game, which then I guess can become like addictive for a short period of time, but doesn't engage people for longer? How do you walk that line?
So I would say that kind of gamification or some of the rewards that you'll often see in these types of products are really important when they're strategically placed into the product at the appropriate moments. But when you're building the product, you've got to have a kind of like a bird's eye view of what is the framework that you're ultimately using to drive this behavior. Gamification is never going to lead to long-term behavior change. It's never going to lead to long-term behavior change. You need to have a kind of framework that sits above that. And the framework that I often use, I've read a lot of different frameworks, and I find some of them kind of like scientific, some of them really hard to figure out how you can kind of like practically extrapolate that out and build products from. But one that I would recommend is the COMBI model. And this is where we were talking about capability, opportunity, and motivation. You need these three parts in your service to drive long-term behavior change. Then you want to think strategically about where can you purposefully place gamification into your product to be able to maybe bring someone back in or celebrate a moment. People want to see progress. When you're embarking on a long journey, people want to see the progress that they're making. And those are the moments when gamification can play a role, but it's never going to form long-term behavior change if that's all that you're using within a product.
And if I may add to that, just one point on that model. So you have like capability, opportunity, and motivation. And I think that we need to realize that the most difficult and the most fragile one is motivation. Motivation is like it depends on the hour of the day. How did you wake up? How do you move, and so on. So that is very fragile, which means it leaves us with opportunity and capability as the big one. And hence, and this is what BG Fogg was saying in this tiny habits, is that if you make the capability really easy, if you make the first entry really easy, small step, baby steps, this is where you can drive people little by little into that change. So I think it's super important to realize that motivation is like the least thing we want to base our intuition on.
In ChatGPT, when I was looking at behavioral change, one of the risks of it was, I guess, over gamification. And I think it comes back to the first question. It's like, if you look really good, you want to like wear an outfit and so your friends see it, you go to work. And I think we have to not forget that, like, if we put our entire lives and mind spaces into an app, then we're forgetting the fact that we should be able to live in the real world. We should be able to cheat. I mean, the most beautiful buildings or rooms are lived in. And I think that that's really important, is to remember that there's context to everything. And I think we often forget that context matters a lot more than anything else. So I'm sure your goal is not for the rest of their lives to have people hyper engaged and focused on their gut till the end of time. It's more that they feel better about themselves and they move out of it. And I think we just need to know that it is possible to become too controlling about affecting people's lives and behaviors during COVID. Did people do Joe Wicks during COVID? Yeah, okay, 1%. I mean, I was at Google and they really liked him because everyone was on YouTube, right? So they talked about him all the time. But like, he became like really famous, and who is not really fit during COVID, right? There was nothing else to do, and luckily now we have other things to do, and so I think that just remembering that there is a balance and context in anything that you design, particularly in tech, is really important.
Yeah, first, thank you, of course. It's very interesting and inspiring. And I think a lot of, also having a peek into the reality like L'Oreal, which is potentially could have a very positive impact in the, society, wider society, for the amount of people that you're touching upon. A lot of the questions were already, the two questions that preceded mine are, of course, interesting and touching upon very important themes. One thing that I found fascinating and is very interesting is also the pre-mortem process. So when you're designing something like that, do you actually think you're technically reinforcing a negative behavior, which is the one of constantly checking and using your phone to update data? Only thinking about the gut health and thinking about the skincare, there's two reasons that I have to pick up my phone and maybe twice a day or 3 times a day, take pictures, post it online, register that I put my skin on and all that. So how do you interact with this kind of negative behavior in a way? And also the second one is more related to, shouldn't all these things have an expiry date in a way? I need you to put your cream on for 21 days. At 30 days, my app should be off, because coaching is all about teaching people for them to be able to then grow by themselves and have their own experience without the need of the coach to be there next to them. Otherwise, it's becoming a bit of an unhealthy relationship. If we compare a human relationship again with a digital relationship, if it's a behavior, it's built in your day-to-day, and there's no need to constantly reinforce that kind of behavior by sending notification or having to keep the plans very lush and very nice and very positive. And again, upon very interesting what you were saying about, aren't we replacing another personal relationship with yet another digital relationship and taking away from it? Thank you.
They are two really, really great questions. And to answer the first one, I genuinely think there is an opportunity for brands to look at how they can minimize the interaction that they have with consumers, but just do it just enough. Let's not try design products where we're trying to kind of like capture someone's attention for hours upon end. I mean, A, it's unrealistic. And B, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to kind of, produce anything better at the end of it. When we're thinking about L'Oreal at the very beginning of the project, we just said, all we want to do is be able to take a moment when someone's doing their skin in the morning to help them build a better routine. So we were looking when designing that product to own that moment. And I think that's really interesting as a space. Like, what moment do brands want to own when you're starting to build digital products? And the second question around, should we not be happy with kind of someone completing a journey? Absolutely. With Sproutiful, if someone manages to incorporate 30 plants into their diet, job done. Step away. That product is redundant. It's done the purpose that it was set out to design to do. I think we often have a tendency to bring a Swiss Army knife approach to the work that we're doing. Oh, the outcome has now been met. What can we now do for the product? How can we continue to build and Frankenstein this? the best products are the simple products that do something really well, and we should think about that when designing digital products. And that I think is two really pertinent questions that we've been discussing at length actually in the studio at the moment.
And to build on that, just one comment. There is that Tinder competitor that is called Hinge. Their tagline, I don't remember, I saw it in French, so I can't really translate it in English just yet. But essentially, it's the app to be deleted. This is their tagline. Like, this is how they present themselves. And I think this is super interesting because it's, sorry?
Who does? Who has deleted Hinge in the room?
No, but my point is that if they achieve the goal to make you meet the right person, then you can delete it. And I think it's super interesting because it gives the purpose of the app is not to be there all your life. It's actually to help you achieve that goal. So I think there is something really interesting there.
Alex, coming over to you.
Hi guys. So the question actually goes with what everyone has asked, but it's more about, I really commend you guys for not using the term user. And user has a very negative connotation with someone being an addict, and because of technology, he's become more mainstream. So when we're designing for behavior change, how important does it become to change these definitions for more people to accept it, being one, and second, for actually using those playful engagements around these serious topics to generate those behavior changes?
I'm really interested in emotion recognition. Most of our products that we use somehow think about emotion, whether they're looking at the words that you've been posting on Facebook or now, of course, with facial recognition. It's quite problematic, of course, but equally it's a way of trying to engage with an individual, not as a user, but as an individual. So I don't know how you guys name it. I mean, I think most tech companies use the word user. Some of them use audience. Now I think community. These are all words that I think do shift the dynamic of how you consider an entity at the other end of the line. But I think the bigger issue we have is in thinking that it's okay to understand you as a person based on your expressions on your face or the words that you're putting into these systems. So I think your point is really well made. I still think there's a disconnect there. And I have a lot more thoughts on it if we can chat later. I also have a Substack if anyone, it's really nerdy, if anyone's interested in these conversations. But I don't necessarily think just changing the word user to something else will change the end goal, which is efficiency, stickiness, and subscriptions.
All right, I think that's probably time to head back next door. I think there's still some food and some drinks available. Please give me a round of applause for our wonderful panel. Thank you very much to ustwo for having us. And if you have any more questions for our panel, they'll be next door, so you can come up and find them and ask away. Thank you very much for coming. Bye.